Okay, so now we're going to start the assembly. The assembly procedures, as you saw, we put the mainspring back in the barrel. I have not oiled that yet, and that's the cap for the mainspring barrel. And we have to put this is the clutch, and we're going to put this back in the order that it goes in and get this locked into the watch. And how this works is we take this piece like so, and then we're going to take this piece like so. And then this, you can see it has a T-end, and that goes in like that. And while that's there, we're going to give it a little bit of oil. Take our oil cup, put a little oil on this shaft now that it's been cleaned, and bada bing. You can see I'm using a watch holder, a movement holder that fits the size of the movement. And now that the clutch is assembled, we're going to take it and you see what happens. We're going to set the clutch on the watch. And our batteries are good. Now here's where we have to be careful, because what we don't want is we don't want this spring right here to fly all over the place. Like that. And you can see how that clutch works as I gently push in the clutch pin. And that allows your watch, this is the winding position, and that is the setting position for the clutch. And while I have the watch in this position, I like to put a little dab of oil on all the little bearings. That way we know everything's in good shape. And you can see how nice and smooth that works. And just because I put a little dab of oil on that, a little dab of oil here, ever so slightly. And you can see when I pick up the oil that there's just a little ball at the end of that little bead that shows up, holds a tiny little drop of oil. That's all you need. You don't need any more than that. Okay. The next step, I like to place the mainspring in position because that's going to be the lowest piece on the movement. So what we're going to do now is just put that up here. I'm going to take my red oiler, which has a slightly larger bead at the end of it. Allows me to pick up a little extra oil. And we've cleaned and surfaced the mainspring. And all you have to do with the mainspring is just rub oil all the way around the perimeter like this. And what will happen is, as you wind it, it will seep in and move its way into the flat surfaces. You could also pre-oil it before you place it in the barrel. The only issue you'll have at that point is you may end up not being able to sometimes you'll make a mess of your mainspring winder. So the second step here after oiling is to put the barrel together, and then you'll see we've got a keyed side here. We're just going to get that in there. And that's that. And then the mainspring barrel completely goes in just like this. Now you can see our mainspring barrel's in place, and now we can start placing the train gears. Now I'm not going to oil any of the train until I get the movement together. So a lot of times this is trial and error. You're going to put your gears in, you can see which gear goes in where. And as we already have inspected all the gears, we're going to look at the ends and make sure everything is fine. Okay, so now that we've got the barrel in, we have to assemble the train gears into the main plate. Most of the time, I'll start with the escapement. And that typically goes in first, depending on what kind of a watch you're working on. The next is the second hand wheel. And we're just going to grab that here and gently put that into the pinion. The jewel that's there holding it. And you'll see as you put the gears in, if you're putting them in right, these spaces are going to touch perfectly. There's no right or wrong way to put these together. It's going to happen based on the watch. So whatever way the watch wants to go back together, that's how it's going to go back together. Okay. Now, in some watches, they go back a certain way, and you're just going to look back, and this is going to come, it's going to go together the exact same way it came apart. You can see the level. Escapement is lower, second hand, drive, and main gear. You've got the motor barrel or the mainspring barrel, and that's how all that works. Once the gears are in position, we take our plates, and the plates here are going to tie in, for example, this point here is going to go through this ruby jewel here, from here to here, from here to here, this one to that point. What I like to do at this point is I actually start with the mainspring barrel. This holds multiple pieces in position. For instance, if we look at this, here's your clutch, and this is where the clutch is going to fall. Your top of the mainspring barrel sits in here. So when we turn that right side up, and we pick it up, take this and gently, very, very gently, put it in place. And you'll notice that these plates have guide bleeds on them. If you look closely, you'll see the guides here, here, and this one here, and those fit into specific holes on the movement plate. Okay, so what we're noticing here is the barrel, the mainspring barrel, is a little too high, and I'm going to adjust that by putting this in position. And that is right in place. Okay, so now our bridge is covering the mainspring and the clutch, and it's time to put the screws in position. You could keep track of these screws, and it's always a good idea which position they go in, the same position they came out, because they may not fit the same way. Chances are on a new watch made after 1885, they will all fit in the same position, or in any position, because they were all machined identically. Watches earlier than the 1880s will sometimes have screws that were handmade, and if they were handmade, you'd have to keep track of every single position that every single screw came out, because that's where you want to put it back. Now you can see what I'm going to do is just tighten these down just enough so that they don't move, but not tight enough. I don't want to tighten them all the way. There's a reason I don't tighten them all the way at first, and that's because I could do damage if I put the next plate or plates on in an incorrect manner. Now here's where it gets tricky. What we have to do now, because we have 4 gears and we want each of their pinions to come through our jeweled holes without damaging either the pinions or the jewels. So you're going to take this and you're going to gently position it. And that's not going to fit right, but don't force it. And then you're going to slowly wiggle each of the gears until the gears start to fall into position. And you don't want any pressure whatsoever on this at this point in time. You just want each of your train gears pinions to come through the jewel, and I want you to look closely. You'll see the top of the pinion start to come through. Just when they're all in position and everything's tight, they all fall into place. If you move one, you move them all. And you can see how I'm moving the main and everything's moving, including the mainspring barrel. And that's how you put that together. The next step is, now that all the gears are through, we're just going to inspect, and we're going to look through each of the holes in the jewels, and you're going to look for the little metal pinion from the pinion on the gear. And if you can see that there, and there's no slop in any of the gears, we're ready to put the screws in. Okay, so I'll select my driver. And now we'll tighten up each of these screws. Just enough to hold the plate down, not too tight. And when you feel a little friction, you want to stop. So now under close examination, what I see here is that each of the pinions on the gear, here, 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 and here, are showing through the jewel, and they're in the right position. There's no breaks in the jewels. There's no broken pinions. Now we're going to examine this side. This is the dial side of the main plate, and we're going to look at all the positions. Here's the second hand post, and it protrudes. I don't know if I can get a good shot of that, but you may be able to see how the second hand post comes through the plate right here at the tip of my tweezers. And you want to be very careful with that. You don't want to bend it or break it. Here's the main pinion. Okay. And we're going to look at each space. There's a pinion there. The second hand's coming through. Pinion, pinion. And there's no breaks in the jewels. Everything's there. Now we can tighten up the watch. So you're going to give them just a little bit of tightness. You're not going to want to, that's not an engine mount bolt. So you're just going to tighten it to the point where it stops, and give it maybe a little pound and a half of pressure on your finger. Again, we'll test the train, and we see that the train works good. Now, some people will move right into the escapement here, and I don't. What I'm going to do when I put a watch together is I like to get all my little pieces in place and get them ready for winding and setting. So we're going to put the setting gears back in. And remember, some of these are reverse threaded, so you're going to keep your eye on those very carefully. And then you try not to slip with your screwdriver. You don't have to tighten it too hard, just enough. Get free cotton cloth and just wipe it down. And now we go to the next phase. And you see there's a key here. This part, when we cleaned it, has a key, and there's a little screw there. And you'll see the little hole here in this key, and it has to go into that screw. So you're going to wiggle it around just enough until you get it aligned. And once it aligns itself, it'll fall into place, just like that. And then you're going to take the cover washer, the decorative side up in this case, and you're going to put that there. You're going to take the screw and put that in place. And again, this is usually the screw that's reverse threaded. In this case it's not, so we're going to screw this in normally or clockwise to tighten it down. And again, we don't want to tighten it too much because we don't want to ruin that decorative washer. Just enough so it's tight and it's going to hold its position. Okay, so now that we've got the movement partially back together, I always like to take my winder and then I do a test. And I wind the watch spring to see if everything turns, and if I give it a good turn, we see that everything's moving pretty well. At this point, I start to oil the jewels. And again, we're just going to put one little dab of oil at each pivot point, wherever there's a jewel. We'll flip it over. And then we will do this side. And just to make sure that everything's still working perfect, I am going to give that a slight little wind again. And now, if you can hear it, runs a little more smooth, and we're doing well with all the parts here. Nothing's loose. A little bit of play, but nothing that's major. All the screws have been tightened down. Now it's time to work our way to the escapement.